Welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. I'm Trish.
And I'm Julie. We are two nurses exploring holistic healing and wellness practices to empower you to be the leader of your own health. Join us as we try out new things, or as we call it, weird shit, and have some fun along the way. Welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. This is Julie with the third episode of our Pocket Wellness series on energy and emotions. In the last Pocket Wellness episode, I talked about processing emotions. And just to recap, the first thing that we want to do when we're having an emotional response is to acknowledge that we're having an emotion. Once you acknowledge that you're feeling something, then you want to, step 2, identify the emotion. This step can feel difficult when you are first starting to identify emotions, but it's an important one. If you do not feel like the first emotion that you've identified doesn't feel like it fits right, it might not be. So you just try something else until something resonates with you. After you identify what emotion that you're actually feeling, you want to tend to it. So you sit with it, you feel where it is in your body, if it's a tightness, if it is pressure, could be that your stomach feels upset, or maybe it sits in your throat, feeling what that is in your body. And as you start to do this more often, when you're identifying the emotions, it becomes easier. But the topic of this episode is when you are experiencing an emotion, how long do you sit in it? It's healthy to feel your emotions in order to process them so that they don't get stuck as little balls of energy somewhere in your body. But you also don't want to let your emotions completely take over your being. There was a time when Freud recommended that you just let all of your emotions dump out, so to speak. However, that was not something that he continued to recommend over time, because that's actually not healthy for you either, to just emote all over the place and have tantrums or rage it out or whatever you want to call it. So it's important that you feel your emotions, but you don't let them take over yourself. That actually impacts the coherence of your heart. When I talk about heart coherence, that is when there is synchronicity between your heart, your brain, and your body. Your heart actually has a brain in it that has more than 40,000 neurons in it that sends signals to your brain. Actually, your heart brain sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Your heart also has the ability to send out neurotransmitters and hormones. Not all thoughts are generated within your brain, but also within your heart. So think about that when you start to have emotions. Those signals that are sent out impact all of your body systems. So your breathing, your blood pressure, brain waves, heart rhythms, those neural signals impact your cognitive function as well as your emotional composure. So depending on the situation or what's happening, you may need to maintain more composure and the ability to make fast, good decisions for yourself. The more that you're able to do that, the more resilient you can become. Resilience does not mean that you are not feeling emotions or that things don't impact you. It's more that flex that you're able to go from feeling something and regulating yourself to, and the more you're able to handle different situations. One of the things that Trish and I talked about probably almost a year ago, maybe a little less, was heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is the beat-to-beat timing and variation between heartbeats. The more variable, or the higher that number, which is measured in milliseconds, the more that you being able to flex back and forth between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. Your body, when it gets a stress signal, it does not necessarily differentiate between running away from real danger versus everyday stress that you have in your life. The more that when you have something that triggers a stress response, if it's not a true danger, the more that you're able to flex back into a more orderly pattern of your heart rate variability, the more resilient you are going to be. What does heart rate variability have to do with processing and managing emotions? It is just one metric or one way that you can see how emotions impact you physically. The other thing that's interesting is that heart rate variability is measured in milliseconds, but there's also a pattern that's related to it. The more stressed or negative your emotions, the pattern can become very erratic. While when you are in synchronicity, the pattern is more along the lines of a sine wave. The more positive or coherent the pattern, it is more regular than irregular and jagged when you're having a negative or stressed response. So you could have a heart rate variability of 40, which is not that high, but you could have a heart rate variability of 40 in both a coherent pattern or a non-coherent pattern. And you're not going to know that based off of the number that you may see from smartwatch or an Oura ring, something of that nature. You're going to have to make that judgment on how you feel. What do you do after you have experienced a negative or stress emotion? You acknowledge, yep, I'm having a stress response right now. What is that I am feeling? Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And you sit with it for a few minutes. To move out of that space, there is a technique that you can use called heart-focused breathing. What that does is it helps to regulate coherence and the response that you are having from very erratic and jagged in the pattern like I described for heart rate variability to more regular and sine wave like. What you want to do after you go through that 3-step process of helping to process emotions and you start to bring some awareness to your heart. One of the ways that can help you focus is you put your hand over your heart. And then you just start to breathe in and out in a smooth and natural way for about 5 or 6 seconds in and then 5 or 6 seconds out. You don't want to force how you're breathing. Imagine that you're breathing directly into your heart and breathing out through your heart. And with each breath, you start to think about a time where you felt joy or love for someone or something that makes you feel grateful, makes you feel cared for or safe. And you breathe in and breathe out. It could be a memory or it could be a place that makes you feel welcomed and warm and safe. You do that for a short period of time, maybe 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be long, and that can start to regulate how your body is responding. When you're in the thick of it, and I feel like for me personally, over the last 3 months, I've been in the thick of it. There's been illness in close friends and family, some very scary and tragic events that have happened. It can be really challenging to settle yourself to a place where you don't feel like you're this erratic, crazed pattern. It takes intention and training for you to be able to support yourself during some of these difficult times. By taking the time to invest in that training of how you're responding to different things that are happening in your life or in your environment, whether they're real big things like cancer or small things like stresses at work that aren't the bear chasing you down the street, but you're still anxious about. Feels like bears chasing you down the street. And so you don't have to live that way. You can invest a few minutes of your time when you're not feeling so stressed and maybe in the moment of difficulty to practice and set yourself up so that when you do have a difficult time that you're facing, this is one of those things that you can just fall right into. You can do that when you're sitting in a meeting or driving down the street, waiting in car line for drop off or pickup. And I promise that it will make you not only feel much more capable of handling whatever situation is coming your way, because your brain will be able to use that higher executive functioning that you need it for, and you will be stronger for it because your emotions won't be taking over. They won't be whisking you away. You will be feeling them, but you still got you. That's all I have for this episode of Pocket Wellness. I hope you enjoyed it. And if this resonated with you, take the time to share it with a friend. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share with a friend. Want to learn more about a specific topic? Drop us a line on our website and we can explore it deeper with you.